So in my last video, I talked about what you should be focusing on when you're just getting into mixing and recording music in a home studio if you're a beginner. This video is about people that have done it for a little bit, have kind of got a basic sense for how to do the process, how to make some decent sounding music, but now are trying to take their music to the next level. And to get to that next level, there's some new priorities that you need to worry about and focus on that might be keeping you from getting those mixes sounding as good as you want them to be. Now, before we get into it, I do have a downloadable guide on a bunch of home studio gear recommendations that I've made. It's going to help you make some good decisions if you're looking to upgrade some of your gear to get to that next level. So if you want some helpful suggestions, go and check that out. I have a free download link in the description. So as an intermediate music producer, this is what you should probably be focusing on. You should know what sounds complement and go with other sounds to help you build and arrange your music so it sounds full and dense. You really have to have a good understanding of dynamics and learning how to make space for the other instruments to coexist in the mix. And then finally, at this stage, this is where you're going to need to level up your editing skills and making sure that the performances are as polished as possible. So let me give you some recommendations of things to focus on and work towards in this stage of your journey. So you already have the basics. You can set up preamps and gain stage things. You can record clean audio. You should also know how to use your basic mixing tools like EQ, compression, reverb, panning, and knowing how to set the appropriate level for all the different instruments in your genre and your mix. And your mixes overall should be sounding okay. But what you probably are running into problems with is mix translation, where it sounds good in your studio, but it's a nightmare in a car or in a different environment. Now, the reason that that happens is because your mixing environment is probably not acoustically treated, or it's not balanced or tuned properly. So you can get a buildup of different frequencies or large dips or nulls where you can't hear frequencies either. So as you leave and you go to a different environment that might not have those same boosted frequencies from the acoustics in your room, all those compensations you made during mixing are going to appear in those other systems, and it's going to sound bad. So at this stage, what can we do? What I would recommend doing is either investing in a mid-grade pair of headphones designed for mixing, and I'll put some recommendations in the description of headphones that I like to use. I personally use Sennheiser HD 650s as a reference pair of headphones. I think they sound great. I've gotten really good mixes on those headphones, but headphones can do some weird things spatially that you need to be aware of. But that's a whole nother topic. If you hate headphones and you want to do the speaker thing, I get it. I have studio monitors as well, but you should probably start investing in actual acoustic treatment for your studio. And you don't need to go crazy here. There's a lot of nonsense that I hear out on the internet, but you can do some basic treatment and dramatically improve your results. All you need to do is hit your primary reflection points, which is essentially just getting panels on the left and right sides of you to absorb the first reflection point off your studio monitors. And there's plenty of videos on how to set this up. And it's also a good idea to put some acoustic absorption behind you. A good trick is also trying to get your speakers as close to your back wall as possible. That's going to help reduce some weird resonances that can occur from speaker boundary interference response, or SBIR. But that's just a basic rule of thumb. You may also consider getting a subwoofer at this point to help extend the low-end range of your studio monitors. You should also consider investing in some sort of room correction software. One of the simplest systems that I've seen out there is called SonarWorks. I have a link to their products in the description. I actually have a video to show you how well it can actually correct home studio. I do it right here in my studio, and I show you the entire process. So I'll put a link to that right up here so you can check that out. But that actually does a very good job for a first pass of flattening out your room response to get it into a position where it might translate really well outside of your studio. Highly recommend that. Now, in terms of mixing an actual song, some of the things that you should really be working on is building out a solid, reproducible mixing template. A mixing template basically has all of your group buses already predefined, named, and a basic overall structure so that you can just quickly pull in your files and start mixing or record into your mixing template. A mixing template will set you up for success so that everything is done the same way each time, so you can learn what works and what doesn't work, and then make those adjustments to your template. Once you make a template, it's not set in stone. It's going to evolve with your mixing style. So keep saving new templates, maybe put dates on them so you know what the latest template is. But if you start from scratch every single time, it's going to be really hard for you to establish some sort of rhythm or pattern so you can quickly mix songs. That's how the pros are able to mix an entire song, hundreds of tracks, in a few hours. And I bet you've probably spent a month working on a single song and it's not done yet. Start working on your mixing template. To expand on your mixing template, you also need to start understanding and mastering gain staging within your template. Now, in a digital environment, gain staging doesn't quite matter that much. It's not like it's going to ruin the sound of the audio. But what it does do is make it really hard for you to get the same sound for different songs if your gain staging is all messed up. Because as your audio goes through different buses and it's routed around, some songs might overload a compressor or make things start sounding really weird and pumpy. And if you don't have a way to adjust the level of the audio as it's feeding all these different buses and routing around in your template so that it does the same gain reduction and it's hitting your plugin chains the same way every time, guess what? Every song on that album that you're trying to record is going to sound different and you're not going to know why. So take the time to learn how to gain stage properly. Another thing you should be working on as an intermediate mixing engineer is establishing a sense of depth in your mix. This can be achieved using reverbs and delays and understanding how they work psychoacoustically in your brain to make a sound source feel like it's pushed back in the mix. The louder a sound is, the closer we think it is to us, and the lower the ratio of the direct sound to the reverberated sound or the delay makes it feel pushed back in the mix. Delays can sort of push an instrument back in the mix, but it doesn't do it in the same way as a reverb. I like to think of delays as a way of gluing a sound source to the other instruments. At this stage, you should also have an understanding of clashing frequencies and how to carve out space in different instruments to make sure everything has its own place. I have a video on this. I'll also put a link somewhere up here for how to EQ guitars and vocals. And you can use that same strategy with any instrument to find clashing frequencies and get it out of your mix. That way, everything has space, things don't sound cluttered, and it just gives it a massive soundstage. But in one sentence, the way I do this is by taking an EQ on, let's say, a guitar bus, boosting frequencies, and then listening to where those frequencies interfere with the vocals, for example. The spot where it's really hard to understand what the vocals are saying by boosting some band in the guitars tells me that there's a conflicting frequency there, and I'm going to make that cut on the guitars. I always tend to cut frequencies away from the lesser important element in the mix, and in almost every case, vocals are always going to be number one. So always make room for vocals. Everything else should kind of go around it. And finally, the last thing you should really be prioritizing as an intermediate mixer is developing your editing skills. Now, it's very rare that you're going to have a perfect performance captured. You're going to have to learn how to transparently tune vocals. You're going to have to learn how to maybe get drums a little bit tighter to a grid or edit them so that they sound really tight and punchy. It's also important, especially if you have multiple guitars or other instruments that are hard panned, that they are very tight and timed well. You're going to have to learn how to slip edit. You're going to need to understand time stretching. So take time and learn those strategies and learn how to do them transparently. You can edit vocals and not sound like T-Pain or like some crazy AI robot thing. If that's what you're trying to do, cool. But you should be developing your editing skills so that nothing in the mix is distracting when it's being played back. As you start getting better at mixing, all the imperfections are going to come out and rise to the surface, and it's going to start taking away from the emotional connection the listener has with your music. So as mixing gets better, you have to also get better at editing so that the listener can focus on the music. And just a shameless plug, if you want to learn how to edit like a pro, I have an entire course on that. I actually have 3 mini courses, so you can go check that out. That's going to teach you how to edit guitars and bass. I have a mini course on vocal tuning and then also drums. And I'll give you guys a coupon in the description. It is by far the most comprehensive editing course I've ever seen. That's why I made it. You'll get a ton of value from that. And it costs less than any plugin. And it will do way more for your music than any plugin. So there you have it. That's what you should be focusing on as an intermediate producer, home studio musician, or mixing engineer. If you think I missed something, if you think I left something out that's super important or something that you think you really should focus on, let me know in the comments below. And if there's one of these things that you've been neglecting, I'd also love to hear about it. I want to remind you that I have that home studio gear guide in the description as well, and you can check out the different courses. And if I have videos on any of the different priorities that we talked about in this video, I'll add links down in the description as well. My name is Bobby Balow. I'm the mixing and mastering engineer at Rayton Productions, and I'll see you in another video.